Hi, everybody. Well, I don't know if you know what you're clapping for yet. So we'll see. So just a little bit about me. Again, my name is Kathy Helm. I'm a full-time professor at Lewis University, and I'm in part-time private practice at the Fox Valley Institute in Naperville, where I see couples and adult individuals. How many people in the room are couples counselors? Okay, so you've been here before. Yeah, you've been here before. So today, I'm not necessarily gonna maybe teach you anything new, but maybe today we can collaborate, right? I have some kind of current research and I was crazy enough to do a live demonstration, so we're gonna see how that goes. But one of the things, one of the reasons why I like to sort of have these discussions is so we can work together to treat the impacts of infidelity more effectively. So why don't we go ahead and get started? And come on in and sit anywhere, right? And please feel free to interrupt me throughout the presentation with questions, okay? So here we go. I do have a couple of short film clips, but if you've ever been to ICA before, you know that the internet's a little spotty. So if we can't watch the film clips, what I'll do is I will give them to you because, at least one of them is really good to use with couples. So why don't we get started on the impact of infidelity? Okay, so today we're going to talk about what is intimacy and what is infidelity. All right, we're going to talk about the different types of infidelity. All right, I'm going to talk about the impact infidelity has on couples, right? We'll talk about particular interventions, and then we'll hopefully do a live demonstration and see how that goes. Okay, so the first place we have to start is intimacy, right? What is intimacy? And intimacy is the glue that holds the couple together. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of present some conceptual frameworks for working with couples where there's infidelity, right? And then we're going to talk about all the different types of cheating, right? Because, the more, social media is out there, the more, right, we have more uses for the internet, the more sources there are for cheating. And you probably have seen this in the couples that we work with, right? So intimacy is the emotional closeness or the bond. The current research says that more than ever, we have higher and higher expectations for our romantic partners, right? What are some of those expectations? Oh, I didn't tell you this is interactive. Nobody wants to hear me speak for 90 minutes. Yeah.
Take all the pain in life away.
Take all the pain in life away. What else? And there's some. I don't smell. I use deodorant. If you want to sit up here, yeah.
Be my best friend.
Be my best friend. Okay. What else?
Extravagant acts.
Say again. Extravagant acts.
Know what I want without me having to tell you.
Oh, that's the best one, isn't it? Right. Know what I want. How many couples therapists have heard they should know? And how effective is that? Like, they should know. That doesn't work, right?
They should know me.
They should know me by now. We've been together. You should know what I want for my birthday. You should know all that, and that doesn't work, right? So more than ever, we have higher and higher expectations for our romantic relationships. And the highest expectation we have is consistent emotional connection and intimacy. Now, what is the number one reasons your couples are telling you why they're there to see you? Well, we'll get to that. What's the number one reason besides infidelity? Communication. Is it really communication? No. What is it? It's trust, but it's emotional connection, right? It's really intimacy, which feeds everything else. So if you have issues with, and I don't mean sexual intimacy, that's one type of intimacy. I'm talking about the emotional closeness, which is the glue that holds the couple together, right? If the couple has consistent emotional closeness, right, they have better communication, they typically have better sex, they have better many, many things. So couples think they're coming to see you because of communication issues, but really they're coming to see you because there are typically problems in the emotional connection, right? So John Gottman, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, talks about the importance of knowing each other's worlds, right? And that is one of the definitions of true intimacy, right? Where you know how your partner thinks and feels about things, you know what's going on in their life, at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning they have a dentist appointment, right? Now, how many couples that you've seen begin to have that emotional connection frayed and they really don't know what's going on with their partners? right? And that creates a whole host of problems, which we're going to get into, right? So intimacy implies trust and understanding, right? And physical intimacy is not just sex, right? But it's ways of touching, and this is an important point, ways of touching not shared outside the relationship. Now, I work with all kinds of couples, which is definitely my pleasure to do that. We all know that it is real challenging, but it's also fascinating and super interesting, and you can never fully get it right. Right? It's always like, okay, it's going well. Oh, no, now they're going to get a divorce, right? So it's always really interesting. Couples, the things couples do not talk about continue to fascinate me. One of the things, so if, people in an interracial couple, they often don't talk about race. In a religious couple, they frequently have a superficial conversation about it, and then should they choose to have children, then what? Oh, now it's a problem.
Right.
Oh, now we're in trouble, right?
Yeah.
Right. So physical intimacy, ways of touching, not shared outside the relationship. Couples typically don't talk about what cheating actually is, except just don't have sex with somebody else, right? I remember the first time a couple came in, and this was years ago when texting first became a thing, and they were reading me their fight over text. And I'm like, what the hell is this? What is this, right? And now I got people coming to me, right? And if you haven't figured it out, I'm definitely a Generation Xer. So we could talk about my lack of technology skills, right? But, now I have couples coming in like, here are the DMs right here. Kathy, here are the DMs. This is a problem. And I'm like, oh boy. Right? So we'll talk a little bit about what cheating is, and I'm going to talk about Sternberg's triangular theory of love as a conceptual model for understanding how that emotional connection gets frayed. And then we're going to talk about what the couple contract is, right? So how many people work with couples, and in your office, they discover expectations that they didn't know they had? Yes, because most expectations in a romantic relationship are not stated, right, until you what? Break one. That's right, until you break one. And then people are like, well, now I'm hurt, when the other person had no idea that was the expectation. So we'll talk about that as well. Okay, so Sternberg's triangular theory of love. All right, and this theory came out in the 80s. It's pretty comprehensive. It's so comprehensive I actually have to have notes, so forgive me, right? And Sternberg's theory of love really looks at more of a kind of European model of love. And all of this sort of, if you've seen some of my webinars on ICA, I do one on African American couples and one on intercultural LGBTQI plus couples. And we have to modify what we're doing depending on the contextual factors that the couple is dealing with, right? So there's certain things common to all couples, and then there's certain things, depending on if a couple is dealing with racism or homophobia or some of those things that impact couples differently, right? And we have to change what we're doing. But as a conceptual model, here's what Sternberg's model says, right? That there are three main components of love: intimacy, passion, and commitment, right? And to have true love, right, consummate love, you have to have those in equal measure. When things are out of balance, there are problems in the relationship. Now, if you've been doing couples counseling for longer than 2 minutes, you recognize that couples make it work all kinds of ways. Right, and you can't judge the way the couple makes it work together unless it's abusive or something like that. But couples make it work all kinds of ways. But I want to go over some of the things in this circle, all right? So intimacy is the long-term glue that holds the couple together. It plays the largest role in long-term relationships, right? So if you have a couple who are in their 80s, one of the things that holds together, and we can't assume that 80-year-old couples are still not having sex, they might be, right? But typically, the physical part of the relationship the older people get tends to decline a bit, right? Passion is the glue that starts getting you together. That's a good-looking person, right? So that's where it starts, right? But the, jump your bones phase doesn't last the distance. It doesn't, right? But it's the thing that sort of starts things off, right? Right. It does start it off, right? And commitment is the cognitive an emotional decision we make to stay with our partners, right? So commitment is also long-term. It's also long-term. And then we have all these different kinds of loves in here, and I'm just going to go over a few. So one is non-love. That's the Starbucks guy, right? I see you every day. I say, hi, we have a relationship because you make, I don't like Starbucks, but that's okay. It's a good example, right? And you say, thanks for making my coffee, and we don't have a deep friendship, right? The second part is liking, right? One of the things that I've realized about couples is sometimes they can really love each other, but what? Right. How many people break up because they don't like their partners? So I think like is way underestimated in the literature, right? It's not frequently love that fades. You can fall out of love with somebody, right? But it's really like. And couples can love each other deeply and not stand one another. And like is one of the hardest things to put back into a relationship, right? Once that continued. Like everybody who's been in a long-term relationship at times doesn't like their partner. But if you really don't like your partner long-term, that does not bode well for the relationship. So liking is important. Empty love, right, is decision and commitment, but there's no intimacy and passion, right? Romantic love, you have intimacy and passion, right? But the decision and commitment doesn't exist. This is like Romeo and Juliet love. They were what, 13? I love you, right? But, you know, unfortunately, we all know how that ended, right? So they didn't actually make a commitment to one another, right? And companion love, when intimacy and the commitment are there, but the passion is faded. And this is something that we see, right, frequently, especially with older couples, not always, right? You know, how many people work with couples where you're like, tell me, you know, what is your physically intimate life like? And they're like, we haven't had sex in years. Yeah. Is that a problem? It depends, right? It depends on if they think it's a problem. So if it's not a problem for either of them, what? It's not a problem. If it's a problem for one of them, then it's a problem, right? So everybody's very experienced in the room. I appreciate that very much, right? You know, so we don't diagnose a sexual intimacy problem if the couple are like, nah, we're good. Right? But the other components are problematic, then there's a problem, right? And then the last is supposed to be the best type of love, which is consummate love, which to a degree, all three components are present, right? And again, with the physical aspects of the relationship, one of the first things when couples don't like each other, and one of the first things that disappears when couples have issues with one another, is non-sexual touching and kissing. Right? Those are the things that tend to go away, right? Any questions on Sternberg's model? It's just a kind of conceptual basis for some of the things I'm going to talk about. Okay, so we know this guy, right? So I'm going to go over this briefly and the EFT stuff briefly, and then we're going to get into talking about infidelity. So John Gottman is an empirically validated model for working with couples, right? And it assumes that healthy relationships have an emotional connection. So John Gottman's work and Sue Johnson's work on emotion-focused therapy are very close, right? They're actually very, very close. They're saying very similar things. And if you're not a couples counselor and you want to be, these are two models to get trained in along with, you know, family systems and some other things. But these are very important models, right? And Gottman assumes that friendship is at the heart of romantic relationships. And to a degree, he has a point, because the friendship is one of the things that allows the relationship to go on a long time. But we know that if that's what the couple wants, right? If that's what the couple wants, right? And this is his sound relationship house. So you can't have a foundation without trust and commitment. And we know with infidelity, it's the trust piece that becomes problematic. And these are the things that you would work on with your couples in couples therapy. And the Building Love Max is about intimacy. That's the piece is about knowing your partner's world, okay? Who remembers the Four Horsemen? Okay, so I have a great film. It's like 2 seconds long, which is why, you know, this is something I always have my couples watch, because it's short. Sometimes we watch it together. Sometimes we have them watch it. So hopefully it'll play. Because sometimes, you know, okay, there we go.
Attacks the character of the recipient instead of focusing on a specific behavior. The antidote to criticism is to talk about your feelings using I statements, then express a positive meaning. Contempt is an expression of superiority that comes out as sarcasm, cynicism, name-calling, eye-rolling, sneering, mockery, and hostile humor. Contempt is the greatest predictor of relationship failure and must be eliminated. The antidote to contempt is to treat one another with respect and build a culture of appreciation within the relationship. Defensiveness is self-protection through righteous indignation or playing the victim. Defensiveness never solves the problem and is really just an underhanded way of blaming your partner. The antidote to defensiveness is to accept responsibility, even if only for part of the conflict. Stonewalling occurs when the listener withdraws from the conversation without resolving anything. It takes time for the negativity created by the first three horsemen to result in stonewalling, but when it does, it can become a habit. The antidote to stonewalling is to break for at least 20 minutes, calm down, then return to the conversation. Spare your relationship from certain destruction. Learn more about eliminating the 4 horsemen by visiting our site.
Okay, so I like that clip. You like that clip? It's short, right? It gets to the point, and we know that Gottman said that, you know, he could predict divorce, at least in newer couples especially, with what, like 90-ish%, 98, 90-ish, whatever. Somewhere between 90 and 95% accuracy just by seeing if the 4 horsemen are present. And we know the last 2, stonewalling, you know, can foretell the death knell of the relationship. Contempt is really bad, right? Contempt is bad because it communicates superiority, right? And it communicates, I don't like you, and I'm better than you. Eye rolling, sighing, right? You know, sarcasm, right? So I have a lot of couples who like to be sarcastic with one another. You know what I say? Stop it. Stop it, right? You know, you stop it because it's an expression of anger, right? Because the joke is only the joke when you agree to the joke. And when you're not in a good place, it's not a joke anymore, right? So sarcasm is anger, right? And so one of the things that we do, and I did a TEDx talk on couples, I forced them to watch it, because I sort of unpack some of these things and give examples from research about why these things are so destructive in a relationship. And once couples understand that, they begin to sort of monitor themselves, right? The next theory I'm going to talk about, right, very briefly, is Sue Johnson's emotion focus therapy. Anybody do EFT? Yep. And what is EFT based in, and why do we love it so much for our couples? Yes. And what do we know about attachment theory? Say again? It's everything, right? You know, where we internalize the relationships, like your parental relationships, those close to you, right? And especially then we play that out in our romantic relationships, right? We always play that out in our romantic relationships. And the emotional disconnection between couples is painful for them, is deeply painful for them. John Gottman would say that we begin having sort of negative thoughts about our partners, right? And then he works with something called negative sentiment override, right? Where you work, like when couples become aware of those negative thoughts about their partner, you know, it foretells problems in the relationship, so you work with that. And Sue Johnson would say, right, that, you know, couples begin to elicit behaviors in one another to get close again, right? Or if they get hurt, to push away. And that's what this basically depicts. What do people want to know? Do I matter to you? Do you care? Am I emotionally engaged with you? Are you emotionally engaged with me, right? And John Gottman tells us, and I talk about these two together because they're just such great theories to work with couples. And John Gottman would say distressed couples make even more bids, right, than non-distressed couples. What's a bid?
For connection.
Yes, a bid for connection, like, oh, hey, babe, I'm watching this video. Come and look at this, right? And if the person's like, right, whatever, right? That's a connection that's rejected. And the person's like, oh, what are you looking at? Right, that's a bid that's received, right? So distressed couples make twice as many bids. They're often ignored, right? They're often ignored, right? So one of the things that emotion-focused therapy does is it prioritizes couples' emotional reactions to one another and uses it as data. So you're always working with the emotions of the couple and highlighting them in the moment and doing a lot of modeling, right? You know, if you've been doing this for a while, you know you speak for your couples. Can I speak for you for a moment? You know, did I get that right? You know, you are feeling really angry, and you want your partner to know how angry you feel, right? Did I get that right? That's very, very EFT. All right, any questions? Like I said, I'm just laying groundwork. I tend to put too many things in the slides, so forgive me, so I might start skipping. Okay, so here is where we begin to move into infidelity, and a lot of it is based on our scripts. We have scripts in our head, right? Some of them are based on gender, right? Based on what my expectations for my partner is, right? And here are some of our scripts. Passionate love and sex are supposed to be reserved for the couple, right? And we only share blank with us and us alone. You have to get at these scripts, right? Early on in the relationship. So remember, we join with couples. They give us permission to join with them. And then, whoo, lucky us, we're left to uncover all of this like detectives, right? Because sometimes they themselves don't know exist. Thou shalt not blank with anyone else, right? These are things they may not have talked about before, right? Serial monogamy is frequently the default expectation, but it's also not necessarily talked about with the couple, so you don't want to assume that, right? And what is fidelity? It is a promise of trust and loyalty, right? And when I start talking about infidelity, people have PTSD-like reactions to being cheated on, right? And sometimes the level of infidelity, even if it's you keep liking pictures of very attractive people, right, on your social media, and it's almost as wounding as having full-out intercourse with somebody for couples, because it still is a betrayal, right? So again, we have to talk about, now with ironically, couples who are consensually non-monogamous tend to have better communication skills because they have to set the boundaries and be very clear about what the rules are if they are polyamorous. All right, any questions? Okay, so where do our scripts come from? Doesn't everything come from childhood? Childhood, right, the media, right, and scripts are our values, right, norms, our expectations, cultural and familial influences, right? They're definitely shaped by heteronormativity. Gendered scripts, right? And some of them are explicit. One of the things that's explicit is don't have sex with anyone else, right? But all the other things that I will label micro-cheating are not frequently discussed until somebody breaks that expectation, right? They show up in popular media, right? Social media, all media definitely shapes and impacts our scripts. And so do the comparisons. Everybody else is happy in their relationship but me. Look at that smiling picture that they took for 2 seconds and posted, and then had a fight 2 seconds later. Okay, right, about the lighting in the picture. So part of, and this is a point made by a couples researcher, the key to defining betrayal, and this is important, is deciphering the couple's script. What were your expectations? Right? A great thing to ask your couples is, what did you talk about before you got together? What did you agree upon was cheating? Right? Well, he should know. She should know. Right? We don't know that. So what is cheating? Right? The cheating is as defined as widely or as narrowly as the couple that you're working with, right? But it involves dishonesty and secrets. And remember, there's all kinds of cheating, right? You can have financial cheating, right? You can have all kinds of cheating, right? Even if somebody is, right, like an avid football fan and all they ever do is play football and ignore their partner all the time because of it, that could be conceptualized as cheating, depending on the couple, right? So where you're practicing deception, evading, lying by omissions, right? How many of you have worked with couples where, let's say there was an affair and there wasn't sex, so the person's like, what are you talking about? I wasn't cheating. Yeah, right? I wasn't cheating. We never had sex. And the other person is deeply aggrieved, right? Because it was maybe an emotional affair, and the other person's like, well, you know that's not cheating, right? Right, where, that doesn't go over well, right? So what is cheating? Typically, it's sharing intimacies, whatever they may be, outside your partner and keeping it a secret. Keeping it a secret, right? Any questions on any of this so far? Okay. So the act of being unfaithful, right? Engaging in sexual or romantic relations with a person, breaking up a promise or a commitment. Micro-cheating, I don't want to fall now, right? Micro-cheating, and this is important, opens the door to cheating or other inappropriate activities. What is micro-cheating?
Testing the waters.
Testing the waters, like with what?
Somebody gave me their phone number, but I didn't tell them.
Yeah, somebody gave me your phone number, and I kept it to myself, because why do you need to know these things?
I was just flirting.
Flirting.
You didn't reveal the DMs that someone
I'm
said.
not gonna.
Right, like you did not reveal the direct messages that you received on social media. What else?
We're just friends.
We're just friends, right? That whole gaslighting thing. You are overreacting, right? Oh, right. You are so possessive. It's all in your head, right? So fishing is sort of, kind of testing the waters. How attractive am I really in the world, right? To sort of fishing begins micro-cheating, right? And the problem with micro-cheating is it's easy to sort of say you're not cheating, and the other person feels crazy, right? And it begins to sort of pull at the bonds in the relationship. It pulls at the trust, and the other person insists, I'm not cheating. I didn't do anything, right? So when you have a couple like that, where one person's like, look, I didn't give myself that phone number. I didn't do anything with the phone number. I'm not cheating, and the person is aggrieved by the other person's behavior. What do?
Well, they get defensive, but we are trying to help them validate the other person.
Okay, so that's a great point. So even if they can't sign on to the fact that that could be cheating, depending on how the couple defines it, it's about, but your behavior hurt the other person. Right, so even if you can't get in there like, you and me, no, that is not appropriate, right? You can't even go down the road. You can go, but look, and how many of you work with couples where they don't look at her, they look at you. They don't look at each other, they look at you, right? And then you say what? I want you to look at each other. And what happens? Oh, right? Because it's very intimate to look in your partner's eyes after you hurt them. So that is also a powerful intervention, right? We know that sexual acts outside of the relationship where monogamy is agreed upon is cheating, right? Even having romantic feelings for somebody else that become excessive, right? Most people, it's pretty normative for people to fantasize or have like little mini crushes, right? Or agreed upon famous people that, is okay, right? On once. What? I mean, it is Idris Elba, I agree. That is my agreement as well. Yeah, go ahead.
I think.
Say again?
How would you define excessive?
Excessive, right. So excessive is typically if it starts to interfere with daily activities, right? So I had a client come in to see me because of her excessive fantasies about somebody else, right? She wasn't cheating emotionally, but in her mind, right, she was full on with this other person, excessive, right, repetitive. And excessive fantasies take on a life of their own. And they take away from the emotional connection with your partner because your fantasy is perfect. The fantasy person always knows when your birthday is, right? They know exactly what you want. You don't have to tell them, right? Okay, so different types of, and I'm not going to read all of these, but I'll just go over a few, right? Because, if you work with couples, not all affairs are created equal. Not all affairs are created equal. And these definitions get at some of that. So commemorative infidelity, right? Like I'm in a committed relationship, but I don't have any feelings for my partner, right? And some affairs, right, have their basis in problems in the primary relationship, and some don't at all, right? And that would be like opportunistic infidelity, right? I love this other person, but I was at this conference, not in Lisle, not here, okay? I was at this conference, right? And it just happened. Obligatory infidelity. Somebody has a hard time saying no, right? And feels pressured into sexual acts or affairs with somebody else. So you can see some of these other ones. So you want to find out what type of infidelity is there, right? What type of infidelity is there, right? It can be physical, emotional, or digital, right? Like Facebook is a good thing, but how many people look up their exes? I just want to know what you're doing, right? We're just friends. Okay, well, before Facebook, you weren't really friends with somebody you weren't really friends with, right? So something to keep in mind. Okay, other types of infidelity: financial, emotional, sexual, affairs, abuse, right? The internet. Okay, so, and the problem with, some of the social media stuff is it always looks good on the other side. You see all these pictures, everybody's smiling, they went on vacation, they're so much in love, they were the perfect couple, and couples counselors, we know there's no such thing, right? They may look good for that 2 seconds, but things might be falling apart underneath all that. Okay, so breaches of trust break the couple contract. And once the couple contract is broken, especially if it's broken repeatedly, the old relationship doesn't exist anymore. Not at all, right? It's time to create something new. All right, so I want to pause for questions before I go on. Everyone still with me? Okay. All right, so what is micro-cheating? Oh, any action that opens the door. Flirting, right? Especially any action that's secretive, that you don't want your partner to know about. It won't hurt them, right? What they don't know won't hurt them, right? So an action that crosses the line of intimacy. So in romantic relationships, we typically have a contract of the things that only you and I share, right? And when you begin to share those things with other people, it sort of begins to fray the primary romantic relationship, right? Anything that you're hiding, right? Ways of edging into inappropriate behavior that can end up with full-on cheating, right? And micro-cheating, I love this definition, is cheating by successive approximations, right? Just like, for example, when you teach your dog how to shake its paw, first of all, the dog's looking at you like, that's nice. And you're like, oh, here's this treat. The dog lifts his paw, you're like, yay, here's a treat. Well, and then eventually you want the dog to do this behavior, that is cheating by approximations, right? You keep getting closer up to the line. And typically when that happens, the person is in denial about how harmful the behaviors are. They don't want to see it because micro-cheating makes us feel good. It allows us to test our level of attractiveness to other people without actually cheating. But micro-cheating is cheating, and it is hurtful for the other person, whether they know the partner's doing it or not. Okay, so the internet has made things so much easier, right? You're bringing your text messages to your couples therapist, you're fighting by text, whole conversations about text. I asked my 12-year-old daughter, I called her, right? She just got this phone, she doesn't answer the phone. And I'm like, what is it? She goes, I don't answer phones. What? Right? She didn't even know. She's like, it's doing this weird thing where it's ringing, right? Because all she does is text. Right? And text allows for us to take things out of context, and it allows for greater insensitivity. I believe our profession will be in business a really long time. Agreed. Because people seem to be losing the social skills. When you communicate things by text, right, not only can they be taken out of context, but it enables you to say more hurtful things. And then it enables something I'm going to talk about called obsessive review, because the person can keep going back to the text and looking at them over and over and over again, and it is re-traumatizing, right? It is re-traumatizing, right? So it allows for easy disconnection. Just swipe right, swipe away from all these other people, right? And it allows us to avoid the consequences of our actions, right? It allows the person to relive the past all of the time. All of the time. Well, see, here's this text message that you sent me. Here's what you put on social media. And when couples play out their stuff via social media, I'm going to remove my status, right? I'm going to change my status. It's public. So what was private becomes public. So one of the things to talk to your couple about, and that's a way of cheating too, right? Because it breaks trust. When you play out your problems via social media, then it becomes everybody's business. And you can't get it back, right? You can't get it back. Families weigh in, right? Right? So, it encourages emotional disconnection and also very low self-soothing skills. Couples counselors, you know, one of the things that we have to teach our couples besides emotional regulation is how to self-soothe. My partner hurt me. How do you soothe? So that there is time to heal the conflict, as opposed to, well, I'm just going to go on social media and find somebody better, right? Our world is now set up for finding somebody better pretty easily, you know, and that is a problem, right? And, you know, I long time ago wrote a book chapter in like 2008 on internet infidelity, right? And how many things have changed since then. And one of the things that we talked about was how easy it is to cheat on the internet because it's easy access. You can do it privately, it's affordable, and you can be anonymous, right? And I promise you at least 3 couples in the last year have come to me because of likes and DMs, right? And that relive that, right? And this was a straight couple, and he said, why are you having such a problem with this?
Really?
Why? All I did was like pictures of very attractive, scantily clad women. What is the problem? I did message them, but I said, your outfit looks good. And you think I made it up? I did not make that up, right? And she's like, but I feel very violated. I feel invalidated. And you keep doing the behavior. You keep saying you love me, and you keep doing the behavior. And he's like, this is not a big deal. Part of the reason it's not a big deal is it's so normalized, right? When everybody's doing it, why is it a problem? Okay, so more internet infidelity, right? So cyber cheating is cheating. Digital cheating is cheating. Micro cheating is cheating. Now, this would be my perspective, but you want to work with the couple on what their perspective is. So if you have a couple that comes to you and they're not coming to you for infidelity, right? One of the things that you probably want to have a discussion about is, can we talk about this a little bit? Because you might save them some future problems. Can we talk about what your boundaries are around cheating and micro cheating, even if that's not the issue? Maybe see if you can find a way to work it in there, right? Connecting with exes. What do you mean? That's a problem. I'm not going to take a survey on the room how many people are Facebook friends with your exes, okay? You know, and being Facebook friends or whatever social media platform with your exes is not a problem if your partner knows about it. Right? If your partner knows about it and is okay with it, right? But anything secret, anything that allows for ambiguity or deceitfulness can be a problem. And FOMO is real, fear of missing out, right? And that's one of the things, right? A lot of times, if you don't have staying power in a relationship, right? Anybody who is looking for the passionate part of Sternberg's model, they love being in love, is going to be chronically disappointed because then you're always looking for the next best thing, right? And if you have a relationship like that, well, you changed. You changed, right? And I'm like, okay, true, because we all change, right? Like over the course of a relationship, we all change. And that should probably be normalized. Okay, so the impact on relationships. This is painful, right? One of the things about couples counseling that's so challenging is that we have to sit with couples in deep pain and create the space where it exists. We don't solve that. We don't fix couples' problems. We help them change their process. I will repeat, we don't fix couples' problems. We help them change their process. Gottman said that something like 70% or 90% of arguments never get resolved, but we help them with their process, right? We help them with their emotional connection so they can feel better and more empowered to have better discussions around some areas of conflict, right? You know, so what happens, right? The betrayed partner, they have a sense of betrayal. And this can throw somebody into a PTSD-like reaction, right? Their body goes into fight or flight. Some people numb out, right? Some people cry. Some people like, I'm done, right? But it is a very angsty, deeply emotional, right, when somebody finds out they've been betrayed like that, right? You know, so now they start reinterpreting history through a cheating lens, Well, when you told me you went to that conference, did you really go? Right? Let me see your phone. Right? So when you said that you weren't talking to your ex-girlfriend anymore, did you lie? No. And that's the problem. Once cheating has existed, it can't ever go back to the way that it was. Right? And the person who got cheated on is triggered for years. Can be. Right? And one of the things in our role play that we're going to see is the person who did the cheating frequently gets very tired of hearing about the other person's pain. Why won't you get over this? Right? And some of it's because they struggle to deal with their own guilt and shame. Right? Right? So they demand to see communication, obsessive review. Right? This is huge. This happens most of the time, where the person begins to go over details. You become like an investigative reporter. Well, on the night of June 26th at 6 p.m., where were you? Who were you with? What were you doing? What were you wearing? Okay, right? I want to see it. What gas mileage did you have? Right? And the person feels crazy. They feel out of control and crazy.
Call the person that they know that they had the affair with. You know, I mean, they'll call them up and have a conversation with them. I mean, I've seen.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Because what happens is that break in the attachment relationship is so painful, right, that you feel it's a threat to you. You feel like a crazy person, right? And then, you know, you feel like you've lost your sense of self, and it becomes a massive grief issue as well. Right? So now you're searching. I want to know your location, right? And then maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe this isn't a big deal. Maybe I made more of what it is, right? Because I still love this person. We can't just turn our feelings off like a light switch. And I want to believe them. Because if I don't, things will change. And I don't want to change. So obviously we know cyber cheating can be more easily hidden. Right? This is, I bolded this, I underlined it, I italicized it. If the person who's cheated on finds out on their own, it is far worse. It is far worse than if the other person tells them. If the cheating partner, and on my slides I denote affair partner as AP, and PRP is the primary romantic relationship partner, right? So if the primary romantic relationship partner, right, finds out from the other person, it's painful, but it is not as painful if they find out on their own. Okay? And if they find it on their own, a lot of times people, right, you know that with couples, their emotional reactions feed off of one another. Right? They absorb each other's emotional reactions. So one person may always in their gut be like, huh, that's odd. You keep buying new clothes. Huh, you got a gym membership, right? One of my couples, he got a gym membership with the person he was having an emotional affair with, right? He wasn't a gym goer, right? And she was like, the wife was like, huh, you have a gym membership. We don't have a gym membership, right? So when behavior changes, so a lot of times the person who's getting cheated on has a gut feeling and then they feel foolish. I should have known. What's wrong with me? Why didn't I trust my gut? So it is a awful, awful experience for both people. And here's what I'll say. You must have empathy for both people. We know if you are a good couples counselor, you are not pulled on sides. That's not our job. You may have an internal reaction. Lots of internal reactions. Right? You may have an internal reaction, but your job is to treat the couple because the couple is your client, right? And if you don't bond with both people, and you have to tell your couple, and I'll talk about expectations here. I want to make sure I'm on time. See, look at me. I'm already struggling with time. I always do this, right? You know, but you really have to make it clear to the couple, like, this is a long process. You provide them hope in the first session, but you say, this is a long process. And our work together may feel a little more unbalanced. And when I say unbalanced, it means like the person who got cheated on is going to get more time initially. And you have to always be checking in with the other person to hang in there. And I always say, I promise to get to you both. It just may not be this session. But I promise, like, you have to hang in there. Okay, so partner reactions, again, it's like a PTSD reaction. It can mimic that because it's a disruption in the attachment relationship. Devastation, anger, despair, blame, self-blame, rage, feeling like one's going crazy because you've now lost a part of yourself too. Not just that your partner's cheating on me. Who am I? Why wasn't I good enough? Why wasn't I attractive enough? Right? Did you sleep with them? What did you do? Like that is obsessive review, right? Denial, numbing, checking. Should I stay? Should I go? We have children together. We have a house together. What am I supposed to do with this, right? Who do I tell, right? What happens if the person who got cheated on runs and tells all their friends and family? Oh boy. So what happens?
You get everybody.
Everybody's involved, and then you can't undo it. And if and when the person decides to stay, which is their choice, right? So I always say that couples can move mountains if they want to. If both of them are committed to doing it, they can change, right? If you run out and tell your friends and family, everybody knows. And when you go back, you don't get the same support, right? So that is something to talk about. But what happens? Where does the person who got cheated on get the support? And frequently when that happens, now you told everyone, people start to choose sides. Yeah, and it doesn't go well, right? So what are the reactions of the unfaithful partner? Self-disgust. Yeah.
Janice Abrams Springs, After the Affair.
Such a great book. Yes. Yes. So after the affair.
Doesn't have blaming. I mean,
Correct. Yeah, so thank you for that. So After the Affair is a wonderful book. It's just been updated, right? So helpful to have your couples read together because it goes back and forth between perspectives, right?
What's the last name of that?
I can't remember. I think it's in my references. Springs. Yeah, it's called After the Affair.
Thank you.
Right? So, here's the other reaction, which when we do our role play, our couple is going to role play, hurry up and get over this so we can move on. And that's not necessarily an unempathetic reaction. It's a rejection of the shame and guilt the person has. And the longer you see your partner aggrieved, the worse you feel. So you get angry, you push it away, you say, just get over this. And by the way, the person who was cheated on, they want to get over it too. If both of them have decided to stay together, they want to get over it too. So both of them sometimes agree that they're okay. And then what do you do as a couples therapist? You go, now about that affair, because you know they're not okay. And you still have to get them to continue to talk around it. And the person who caused the pain is the one who can help heal the pain. It doesn't erase what they did, right? But if somebody, and I have this underlined on a slide, somebody who's truly remorseful consistently, and the person who was cheated on has to bring up the affair, and they avoid that conversation. They're like, no, you need anything from the grocery store? It's a nice day. Let's go see the movies. What do you want for dinner? How about the affair? They don't want to bring it up. Well, I don't want to cause the person more pain. You have to bring it up. How are you doing about the affair? They have to be genuinely remorseful, and they have to bring it up, right? Yeah.
So I have a question.
Sure.
When does it become toxic for the person to continue to bring it up? If
Yes.
that person has already shown remorse and taken so many steps,
Yeah.
and they've been that way for years?
Yes. That is a great question, and the answer to the question depends on the couple, right? And so I'm glad you brought that up. At a certain point in time, obsessive review becomes harmful. It's natural in the beginning, you have to do it, right? And if you really want to heal the relationship, and by the way, not everybody who has an affair wants to heal a relationship. Sometimes that's the reason why they have the affair, to get out of the relationship. So after a certain period of time, and I wish I could tell you what that is, right? So if obsessive review continues to go on and dominate the person's life and interfere with areas of functioning, you have to ask your couple the question of, how does this help you?
Yeah.
Right? Yes.
A strategy I use is, I tell them, most of the time I have them see individual therapists, right?
Yeah.
And then when they come into couples, they say, for the first 10 minutes, we check in about how you're doing.
Yeah.
I tell them after that 10 minutes, we need to work on the things that we need.
Sure.
So I do limit the time, because
Yep.
it can go on.
It definitely can. Yep. So having boundaries around that and time. But I mean, that's a good question. And there's not a solid answer, because it depends on the couple that you're working with. And it depends on both couples' reactions, right? So if you have a partner who is genuinely remorseful, right, and the person is still at the heightened area of obsessive review, they might have a background of being cheated on continuously, right? And so it becomes a pattern. And so individual therapy as well as couples might be warranted too. But that's a great question. Yes.
And some people probably already do this. Jennifer Weiner Davis.
Yes.
Like Healing from Infidelity.
Yeah.
When I'm working with couples who have that, or coming in for infidelity, one of the things is I'm like, hey, here's a resource. Let's each one of you read this, because she says for that book, and
Yes.
read it together.
Can you tell everybody the book again?
I think this is terrible. Healing from Infidelity, Jennifer Weiner Davis.
Okay. Healing from Infidelity, another really good resource.
And it's funny. It's like the people who, like, hey, let's get it. Why don't you get one? And go over it.
Yeah.
Chapter by chapter.
Yeah.
Dang, the people who do cheat are
Yeah.
like, we don't need that book.
Yeah, it's so true. The person, whenever you do a book, the person who did the cheating is like, oh no, I'm good. I read a chapter, I'm good, right? Because again, and the person who cheated, if they stay stuck in shame, there can't be change, right? Like, so you want to move your couple to be more action-oriented. I'm going to skip the film because we know how that went. And if we have time, we'll go back after that, all right? So if the person who cheated stays stuck in shame, you can't move to heal, right? You can't move to heal. And the key to healing is both of them, right? So primary partner reaction. So AP is the affair partner and PRP is the primary partner. So the first stage can sometimes be ignorance or denial, right? You believe your partner's denials, you ignore your own feelings of doubt, and you might think you're crazy. By the way, there's some research that suggests if the couple doesn't go to couples counseling and one or both go to individual counseling exclusively, they're more likely to break up. And we know this. And because you, as an individual therapist, are on your client's side, this isn't good for you, right? You want the best for your client. They're more likely to break up, right, without couples counseling. Shock in discovery, betrayal, anger, pain, hopelessness, right? And I don't know about you, but with my couples, they often experience the same thing emotionally. The expressions look different. So both come in pretty hopeless, right? Or the person who had the affair comes in like this, because they're like, right? They think the therapist is going to blame and shame them, right? And so one of the first things you want to do is say, I'm not here to judge, blame, or shame, right? I really want to work with both of you to heal your relationship if that's what you want, right? And then the problem-solving attempt, right? For some people, right, when they get cheated on, they're like, well, it's me, I did it, it's my fault, I'm not good enough, so therefore I need to dress better, I need to look better, I need to lose weight, I need to gain weight, right? And then there's this constant needing to monitor things. And in the beginning, that has to be allowed. Well, I don't want to share my phone. Well, do you want to stay together? Right? I don't want to share my phone. I don't want to share my social media, right? And so if you have somebody who is pretty adamant that they're not going to do those things, that does not bode well. That does not bode well. Okay. All right, so here are some treatment guidelines for recovering intimacy from infidelity, right? So we know that most couples come to us not as a proactive measure, but when it's bad, right? When nothing else has worked. The first thing is you want to do a thorough assessment of presenting and hidden issues, because we know that sometimes people come to you to break up. They want you to help them break up, but the other person doesn't know. It's a secret. I want you to help me break up with the other person. So you have to uncover couples' hidden agendas, right? The behavior then begins to interfere with tasks of daily living. So what happens is when the person discovers the betrayal, they can't focus on anything else, right? They can't focus on anything else. It disrupts every aspect of their life, right? They do feel like they're going crazy, right? We have to understand the contextual factors of the affair or of the cheating. Not all cheating is created equal. Sometimes if you're working with somebody who is a serial cheater, that doesn't bode well, right? Typically that doesn't work. Couples counseling doesn't work, right? That's a repeated pattern of behavior. and the person typically isn't very remorseful, right? You have to assess for sexual addiction or sexual compulsiveness, right? You know, many, many men and women, right, and non-binary folk use pornography. It's not always an addiction. It can be pretty normative, but doesn't interfere with daily functioning. So I had a couple who came to me about the direct messages, and he was constantly using pornography, and he used it as a coping thing. And so they didn't, and they were young. This is a very young couple. They didn't have a very good sex life, right? Because he was, you know, masturbating for stress relief. But he would do it more and more and more, and so they didn't end up having an intimate life. And then he was ashamed of it, so he hid it from her, right? And so she thought, what? He's cheating. Well, he was doing the direct messaging and the liking and things like that. And for him, he had a hidden anxiety disorder, right? So he used pornography to help him with his anxiety, but it definitely impacted his marriage with his wife. It definitely impacted their sex life, and he was too ashamed to talk about it. So I split them up, right? And we know if you split them up, right, what do we know? We know when you first meet them, you say, I'm not keeping secrets. Don't tell me something you don't want the other person to know, because then neither one of them will trust you. And if you split them up for a session, you must meet with them both individually and then put them back together, right? And he was able to talk to me about that in individual counseling, which was very, very helpful, right? Can couple commit to staying together for a course of couples counseling? That's important. You have to assess. Because otherwise, how can you do your job? Right? Yes. So are you going to stay together for a course? Can you commit to 8 sessions? Can you commit to 12 sessions together while we work on this? What's the other thing you have to assess? Are you still cheating?
Yeah.
Right? We can't see couples if there's domestic violence or an ongoing affair or when somebody refuses. Okay. All right. I need to hurry up if I'm going to get in this role play. Okay, so just a couple more slides, right? So, you know, what do you have to do? So you have to cope with the couple's very, very strong emotions, rage, anxiety. You know, the person who got cheated on is searching for understanding, and sometimes the person who had the affair is searching for why they did it, right? If they're low on insight, you know, finding closure. Closure doesn't mean it's not up for discussion anymore. Right? It just means we have committed to one another, and we're going to commit to working on this and integrating it into the relationship we have now. And that requires genuine remorse and an apology and a willingness to support the person you cheated on through their triggers. Right? You know, the affair partner frequently gets angry when the primary romantic partner doesn't get over it fast enough. And as I said, that's about them. Right? And the primary romantic partner begins to not bring it up either because they don't want to make the affair partner angry and they too want to move on. Okay, I need to really hurry this up. Okay, you know, so what is our role? So one is we have to hold the couple's pain, and that's hard. That is hard on us, right? We have to help the affair partner take responsibility and show genuine remorse consistently, not that one time on a snowy night, right? Consistently, right? You have to teach the couple how to have these conversations and put a time limit on it, just like you talked about, right? These conversations can't go on all night, or people will not want to have them, right? So they can talk about it, but you have to do it in 20 minutes, you have to do it in 30 minutes, that's it, right? And we know from Gottman's work, if anybody's heart rate goes above 90 beats a minute, you need to end the discussion and come back to it because nothing productive will come out of your mouths. You have to teach emotional coping and self-soothing skills. When you are hurt, what do? How do you take care of yourself? How do you emotionally regulate yourself so you can continue to have these hard conversations? How do you tune into what you're feeling in the moment, right? Help the affair partner deal with the shame and the guilt and do it in front of the other person so that the person who is cheated on can see that their partner is also deeply hurting. They may not be able to comfort each other. That's not the goal. But you really want both people to see how much this hurts both people, right? Especially if the plan is to stay together, right? I hurt me and I hurt you by what I did. And that is powerful for the person, right? You know, I don't talk about forgiveness unless that's the goal of the couple, because that's not everybody's goal, right? Again, we don't take sides. We help them understand this as a grief issue, right? And warn them, triggers come up, right? Like I drove by the restaurant I know that you were at with him, and I had a reaction, you know, and that can happen years later, all right? And we talk about how to help the couple be collaborative, right? And then here's the hardest part. Once you've done some work around the affair, now you have to go and do work on some of the problems that may have sort of helped influence the affair. We never say, well, the problems are the reason you have the affair, because everybody has a choice. So we don't say that, because that's not true and that's not fair. But there are frequently problems in emotional disconnection that make the ground ripe for cheating. Okay, so here are some of the questions. Do you love me? Did you have sex with that person? How often? What did you do? This is part of the obsessive review. What does that person have that I don't have? Are you going to leave me for that person? Right? And again, it's an anguish-filled process. Okay, I'm moving on. See, I know I put too much in here. All right, so I'm going to stop and get to our role play, right? I think the last thing I'm going to go over is this, right? You know, you have to ask yourself, what are your values when it comes to infidelity? Have you ever been cheated on before? Because that can get triggered. We all know if you're working with couples, your own stuff definitely gets triggered, right? Have you ever cheated on anyone? Is this likely to sway you? Have you done your own work around that? What are your biases regarding partners who do cheat, right? You know, can you have empathy for both partners? Right? If you really can't, that's not a couple you should see, right? Can you hold both partners accountable for their relationship interfering behaviors? Are you comfortable with conflict? You cannot do this work if you're not comfortable with conflict, right? Are you comfortable with interrupting the couple? You know how they do, right? So you have to say, let's stop, right, in your best teacher voice. Stop, and then stop, right? You have to be able to interrupt them. And can you tolerate hearing about all kinds of sex and cheating and things like that? So these are some things to ask yourself. Nope, nope. Okay, so here are our couple. We have Ari, who's 28, and Taylor, who's 32. They've been together for 5 years, and they've been married 1. Ari's coworker reached out to Taylor to spill the tea about Ari hooking up with Desiree. Right? Taylor goes through Ari's phone and social media for evidence, and she confronts Desiree. Right? Ari has a son from her ex-boyfriend, Emilio, who's 6. And the ex-boyfriend was sadly killed in a car accident when Emilio was 6 months old. And now Taylor is helping to raise Emilio. Taylor identifies as lesbian, and she's white. Ari identifies as bisexual and identifies as Latina. And Desiree is also a lesbian Latina. So I want you to watch for obsessive review, guilt, shame, defensiveness, compassion, and compassion fatigue. So I want to introduce Ari and Taylor to you, okay, who have agreed to role play a couple. So if you will pull your, I'm going to go back and get this chair. Ooh. How are you guys doing?
She won't stop bringing it up. Why wouldn't I?
Okay, what happened this week?
When we were in the kitchen, Taylor was making breakfast, and my phone went off. And I go to get the room to answer the phone call from work, asking me if I could come in early. And when I come back into the kitchen, she saw me. She actually threw it in the sink, and she started arguing with me. She said, "Why did you just go to the other room?" And I was telling her, "Well, because you're being loud, you're making food, and so I have to answer my phone call. What do you mean?" And she's like, "Are you talking to her again?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "No, I'm not talking to her again. If anything, she's not talking to me, and you know that." So we got into it this week because of that. Because I answered the phone.
How bad did it get?
I don't know, when did you start talking to me?
Okay.
She's blaming me this whole time.
So
She's the one that did it. She's blaming me.
how are you doing?
I'm pissed.
Okay.
She's being rude to me and
Yeah.
giving me this when she's the one that did that to me. I have a right to question her.
Okay. So let me ask you this, right? We've been working together for 4 sessions, right? And we've been talking about sort of the impact of cheating with Desiree has had. Have you guys been able to have some conversations about that together?
Well, whenever I break it up, she shuts me down.
Okay. Can I ask for you what that's about?
Because it doesn't feel like a conversation. Conversations are supposed to be back and forth. And it just feels like Taylor keeps accusing me. that a social worker does.
And for you, you're not.
No.
Any thoughts about how Taylor can bring this up to you?
She could stop accusing me. Or picking fights.
Can you tell me why it's hard for you to hear that she's accusing you? Because there's a context, right? You had an affair with Desiree.
Because we already like agreed that like we were gonna do this, we're gonna do therapy,
Yeah.
and just like learn how to do better moving forward.
Yeah.
And
Let me stop you for a second. Do you see how, from Taylor's perspective, it would be hard to move forward when she just found out about it about a month ago? Do you see how that might be difficult?
kinda,
I see you struggling. Tell me what's happening for you right now.
I think it's just hard because of how she went about. I feel like maybe if I had more friends to have like explaining things to her, but she just like stuck her nose in everything.
Okay.
And it like blew up my life, not like just at home, but at work too.
Sure.
And so, I don't know, I feel like, I get that it's like hard for her, like what I
Do you?
think so.
Okay. Can you look at her and tell her what you get about her experience?
You feel like I lied to you. Maybe like you're dumb, like enough. Maybe like and I could have been more honest.
Can I stop you for a second? Can you imagine in this moment how she feels about finding out? So look at me for a second. Can you imagine how it might feel for her to find out that you've been cheating? You didn't tell her, she didn't know, she found out. Can you imagine what that feels like?
Maybe like betrayed, like maybe she like was dumb or something.
Okay, so it's almost like you have an intellectual understanding, but I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, she needs you to have an emotional understanding of how devastated she is. And it's almost like you're pushing away the responsibility of that.
What do you mean like an emotional understanding?
Yeah. Taylor, go ahead.
Maybe like understanding how you, I don't know, when I brought it up in the kitchen, you were mad at me for like continuing to bring it up. I think like talking about it is more helpful for me.
I just feel like you always want to talk about it. And it's like, you know, I feel
And I'm
bad.
gonna keep talking about it because you made the mistake, not me.
So let's stop for a second. You know, you say, you know I feel bad. Can you tell her how bad you feel? And when you do this, can you do it from here? Not here. Tell her how bad you feel. Don't push away how bad it feels for you. Go ahead.
I guess I feel bad to the point where I can't pull myself out of it, and then that was I can't focus on things, and it's even harder because it's like I'm around it all of the time, and I feel like sometimes I don't deserve you. Like why did you still choose to stay with me if you hate me so much for doing what I did? And so I'm human, you know, and I know what I did wasn't wrong, but like the situation that I was in, it was just
Can I stop you for a second? What do you feel to say? Hard. What was hard about it?
Because he sounded like a bad person.
And that's hard. Can you talk about the I don't deserve it part? Talk to Taylor about that part. Because I think what you said is powerful, and that's where the healing is. Tell her that.
I feel like I don't deserve you because you try so hard with me, especially being gone all the time and then taking care of the house, not just the house, but I need to. Emilio is really, really attached to you, and I see it. And so I feel like I can't do what you do, ever. And I don't feel like my problems and like how I operate, like it's not like good enough for you, the way I do my stuff.
Can you respond? You know, I noticed like your body language, you were really angry when you came in today, and now you seem a little more calm. Am I reading that right?
Yeah.
What's
I've
happening?
never heard that before.
Okay, tell me, and then we'll talk to Ari in a second, what it was like to hear her say that.
I feel conflicted because I feel like, I don't even say happy, but his technician said that.
Okay, so that was important for you to hear. Okay.
But also then I'm feeling guilty that I have been bringing this up all the time.
Okay.
So I don't know what I should feel on this.
Okay. Fair. What do you guys think about that? Because you still do have to talk about this, right? So for you, cheating doesn't make you a bad person.
But she makes me feel good about it.
Does she make you feel like it, or does the act make you feel like it?
I guess of what it means that I did.
Yes. And unfortunately, that is something to live with, right? It doesn't have to stay forever, but that's the consequence of doing that the two of you are working together on, right? So you feel badly for doing it, and who would you be if you didn't? Who would you be if you could hurt her without feeling what you're feeling? Who would you be?
Like,
Not someone I would want to know, and maybe not somebody Taylor would want to be with. So the bad feelings are a consequence of what you did, but because you know you hurt Taylor. So that is something we can work on, but that's part of it.
but I feel like one of the things that link female fights is like that bad feeling, like I make myself feel that it's already there. And so others when Taylor gets like mad or triggered, like
Sure.
like it's like also beating me down.
Fair.
And it's like, well then why are we trying?
Fair. So Taylor, what do you need? Maybe I'll ask both of you. What do you need from Ari in terms of talking about the affair with Desiree?
Honestly, like I want to know exactly what happened.
Okay. Is that something you can do? Honesty? That's a pause.
She's really hiding.
Yeah.
I think you have a decision to make. And that's what you need. And then just stop.
Well, intimacy can't live in secrecy. So it is private, but it's not anymore. Right? So do you feel like it's a fair thing for Taylor to ask you for honesty? You don't want to do it, and I can, yeah.
It's just because like it's fair. Like, it's fair. It's fair that you want to know. It's fair.
Okay, let's stop. Hold on to that. It's fair. It's fair, right? And if we're about healing this, some of that lives in fairness. I get why you don't want to, but you agree it's fair and she has a right to ask. Yes? What else do you need?
This is the hard part, center house. I feel so lost. This is all I do. I sleep in the hallway.
Yep.
So I don't know what we are, what we were. I forgot. Like I'm like lost right now.
That's fair. Can you think about what you need in terms of talking with Ari about what happened.
Like what just happened, now she had a pause.
Yeah.
I feel like that I don't want.
So that made your anxiety jump through the roof.
Yeah, because
Sure.
my brain was like, if I did that, she would be really upset with me.
Sure, sure. Can you accept that both of you are here now and that this is hard on you both for completely different reasons and she is trying? I'm not saying it's enough for you right now, but can you accept that she's here talking about with you right now? Reluctance.
I can try.
Fair. But you're both trying things that are making you really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And this is a process. Right. What's it like for you right now, in this moment, talking about these things?
I'm angry.
Can you tell her? And can you listen? Go ahead. I don't know.
I'm angry that we're like having to sit here and hear us. Because I felt like we were like really secure and I felt safe and I don't feel safe anymore.
I just feel like I'm at a loss because I don't know like how to make you feel safe, and I know that like you want me to be honest about like what happened between me and Denz, but you know, like I don't know like how is that supposed to make you feel safe.
How is hiding it? I mean, just
So look at me. How do we make her feel safe? Right? And I'm looking at you because some of it is your responsibility, right? We have to figure this out together, right? So in some ways it's more heavily your responsibility, but really it's the responsibility of both of you so that you can feel more safe. That won't come overnight. So what do you suggest, Mari?
I can be more honest.
There was even like a swallow. I can be more honest. You're struggling here.
I'm not looking forward to her like reactions. I just feel like she's gonna use it as ammo against me later.
Okay, fair, right? Can you hear that? That she's struggling with honesty? Because let me speak for you for a minute, correct me if I'm wrong. She feels like if she tells you what happened, it's gonna hurt you more. Is that right?
I'm just gonna use that.
And then you're gonna use it against her.
I can hear.
Okay, what do you wanna do? What do you wanna do with that, Taylor?
How am I going to change that?
No? What are you gonna do with that? So it sounds like Ari's willing to be a little bit more honest, but she's afraid of your reactions because it will hurt you more and that you'll use it against her later.
And I have to work on my mirror.
Sure.
Yes, because I just like can't feel this allowed something out of control.
So this is very powerfully painful for both of you. But couples can hold hard things. Skepticism. What's
No,
happening?
it's just, I'm listening to what she's saying. And it's like, I'm not asking you not to be. Like, you're allowed to be mad. Like, yeah, like what I did is wrong. But like, can you just be like without like, making me feel like shit all the time?
So else? Ari.
This is how the conversations go all the
So
time.
did you hear yourself out loud? Say it again.
That she
Can you? Right? Say what you said.
can you be mad without
Can you be mad without making me feel like shit all the time? Is she making you feel like shit? It's hard to hold, right? It's hard for both of you to hold. If you work on this, it won't be like this forever, but you have to hold bad feelings. Where are we with Desiree now?
nowhere.
Okay.
We walk past each other awkwardly. I wish I do, but I don't. She won't talk to me. Not that I try, not that I tried.
She said she wishes she knows.
Because I work with her.
You don't need to work with her. We talked about that.
Okay, so Go ahead.
She shouldn't work there anymore. I want her to find a new job.
So you do know in part what they need.
Yeah, I do. I want her to find a new job and not be around her because I clearly can't trust her. She just said that.
Uh-huh.
How can I trust her?
Taylor, I've been working there even since before we were together. Why would you expect? How? And then you don't even need to work right now, Taylor, because of what I have to do at work.
Who takes care of your child?
Our child.
Okay, well,
That's right with her.
so let's stop. Look at me. Take a deep breath. What do you want her to know about what you feel?
It's just like really intense betrayal.
Tell her.
I feel betrayed.
Can you absorb that before you say anything? Can you imagine if it was you? Look at me. Can you imagine if you discovered that Taylor was cheating on you? What changed for you?
My ability to see trust her.
So can you hold her reaction and your feelings?
Yeah.
How will you do this? It is really hard to do. And I'm so glad you're trying.
You can be more patient by just waiting a little more before responding and
Excellent.
thinking about how
So you have to hear her. And you're not going to like this, but you have to be able to talk to her in a way that she can hear you so that both of you get your needs met. So both of you have to modify how this looks. And we'll talk about how to do that, right? So you have rage, fair. That's a fair reaction, right? If you rage at her all the time, she will shut down and you won't get your needs met. She won't be able to hear you, and you need her to hear you, right? We also need to set some boundaries around work with Desiree. Okay, so I know we're running out of time. How are you both doing in this moment?
I'm not gonna lie and say I feel great.
Yeah, I would believe you if you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm upset, but I'm also glad that I was able to hear her and name some things and cause nasty to me.
What was the most important thing Ari said that you were going to take away?
Like if she understands my hurt. Well, actually, I'm not gonna take that back. If she said I did it to her,
Yeah.
that she would be hurt as well.
Yeah, and she feels like she doesn't deserve you. So sometimes when somebody feels a lot of guilt and shame, they get defensive and they push it away.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean she's not hearing you. It just means sometimes it's hard to absorb the consequence of your actions. There's a lot of love here. There's also a lot of hurt. Ari, how are you?
I mean, I'm okay. I just feel like I want to see what would look different, and then I'm doing the things different.
Fair, good. You want to see how it can be different if you can hear her, if you can hear each other.
I just need you to not separate so quickly, because it went from me, you, and Emmy to just me and Emmy in like 2 seconds. You can't just do that.
She can. She can. But she's hanging in there trying not to, right? Right, so some of the things that you could have asked her for is not fair, but you're both trying. Stop.